And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could be with us on the Amazon Live side of our broadcast. If you guys are new to us on Amazon, welcome. Glad you found us over here on Amazon.com. If you're new, make sure you guys do hit that follow button. And if you're not new, you have not hit that follow button, I invite you to do so. You'll find it either here in this corner or down below. You also will see some, and I have to stress some, of the books of our next guest. We're excited. Welcome back. Best-selling author and media personality, Dr. Velma Bagby, to our broadcast. You know her from her best-selling book. You guys see it right here, The Catch No One Wants. I have it highlighted in the carousel now. That's the book that kind of kicked off the Catch series, but she's added other books since then, like you see here, The Wrong Catch. There's also The Wrong Catch, She'll Tear Down the House. You see there. And then there is the latest book that came out, it's hard to believe, 4 months ago, The Catch Book of Fools. That is her nonfiction edition. But as I mentioned, she's also a media personality. Dr. Velma is the host of her own podcast called Dr. Velma Talks. She also is the co-host of her upcoming show here to Amazon Live, Word That Choose to Live By. Dr. Velma, you have a full plate. Welcome back to the broadcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here with you today, Cyrus.
Well, look, we were just talking, and I said it feels like it's been a while, but both of us have been very busy. You've had a lot going on. Yes. I want to kick things off talking about the podcast. And I should let our audience know, I'm sorry, we are simulcasting our broadcast today. Mm-hmm. We are simulcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. So we welcome you guys as well. Ellen of ESP Presents, hello to you. Good to be able to see you over there on IG. Shay Baby, hello to you. Good to be able to see you over there on IG as well. So Dr. Velma, as I was saying, I want to kick things off with the podcast, Dr. Velma Talks. You relaunched it in July. It's hard to believe it's been already over a month. What has it been like for you to see the response?
It's been really exciting. I love the interaction I've had with those tuning in and the questions that are coming in. And it's been exciting.
And for those who don't know about the podcast, talk to them about what Dr. Velma Talks is all about and how it connects with the work you've been able to do as an author.
It's all based on the books that I've written, and it's actually the way I started my journey prior to writing my books. I had a podcast, and that's where I thought I wanted to be, have the platform to talk to people about kind of the dating and relationship issues I see, the problems I've seen, I've witnessed. You know, sometimes you witness a problem, you can't say anything because the person isn't open with you. It drove me to start the podcast. I said, I really need to start talking about this and giving people guidelines on what they should be doing. And then I had to stop because the books came to mind. The Catch series is what I had to stop to do. And so once that was done, I felt led to go back to the podcast and continue to talk about it, because a lot of the things I saw and witnessed, I weaved them into the stories in the books.
Yeah, I want to stay with this for a second, Dr. Velma, because we all do so much, and a lot of times it's not really clicking with us what all we do. It happens to me all the time. You know, and when I actually stop and think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, that is quite a bit. But when you're in the middle of it, you don't really feel it. Have you had time to even process in the middle of everything else that you not only are a best-selling author, but you're a media personality and podcast host?
Not really. I have not, because it's just natural for me. I'm an ordained minister. I'm used to going out and speaking and preaching. I'm used to doing that. I'm a facilitator. I've done workshops. I've presented classes. I'm used to doing those kind of things. But I also try to use wisdom too, because I've always said that God, don't let me be that hamster in the wheel, just turning around, just churning. Make sure that help me to balance it all and know when to pull back, to rest, to reset. Because I always want to keep my ears in tune to whatever God leads me to do. And that's why I've been creating this list you and I talked about before the show. I've been creating a list of things that have been coming to me. I was packing during my move and all kinds of ideas were coming and I started writing them down. But that's what God does when we step away from what we're doing. He downloads more.
Yeah, I'm a living testament of that.
I know.
For sure, Dr. Velma. So as you mentioned, you had the podcast, Dr. Velma Talks, then the books came about. So let's talk about the books. Again, for those joining us on Amazon, we do have the first book in the series, The Catch No One Wants. So for those who don't know, that in the very first book, it's really two main characters in that book. We have the father, Grayson, and the daughter, Veronica. Talk to our audience about how the idea for the series started, Dr. Bell.
Yeah, it really started. First of all, I my very first book was nonfiction, Christian nonfiction, and I had to figure out a way to get these stories out here, get the message out there. And I said, well, let me go over to the fiction category and see what I can do there. And that's when I discovered the contemporary Christian fiction. I thought that would be the best way for me to weave these stories. I wanted to take the same kind of storytelling method that Jesus used when he told parables. Parables are fictional stories. And a lot of people in the Christian community don't like, if you're talking about a Christian fiction book, they don't like fiction. They prefer nonfiction. But I felt that I wanted to speak to an audience, whether they're well versed in scripture or not. And so even though it's scripture based, I still wanted to weave the stories in the way that the parables were weaved. And that was just tell the story. Don't try to put anybody down. Don't say this is you. Weave the stories in a way that people can discover themselves in it, which is what Jesus did. And then leave it up to them to make a decision. Give them a way, a path out of what they're doing. And that's what I did in all of the stories, where the women were messing up in their choices, and the other book, the blue book, where the men were messing up in their choices. I included a path out or a way to avoid this, or how to avoid making the same mistakes. All of that were all tied to the same method that Jesus used in telling the parables.
This is it's such an extraordinary journey, and since we haven't had a time to talk, it seems like for a minute, Dr. Brown, I really want to sit with this for a second because I, I think our audience should know the Catch series wasn't initially supposed to be a series. So
No.
how did that even happen? That you went from just having this one book to now having 3 books in this series that are novels?
I've only started this journey in 2018. Of course, in my business life, I've written a host of things, but to get into the world of writing books was different. I had to study, I had to learn the language, I had to follow the rules, because the rules for fiction and versus nonfiction are different. The fiction requires a show, don't tell. I had to understand that and really apply those laws. And so it took me some time to study. There's a lot of self-help books that were there to guide me. So it took me some time to really understand what I was getting into and how I needed to weave those stories. And so I just thought that when that time came, I was ready after doing my due diligence and gathering what I needed to know so that I can do the book justice. And so I thought this was a one-hit wonder. That's what I thought. I was writing one book, but the audience wouldn't let me put it down. They said, we need more. We need more fish analogies. So many women, from the youngest to the eldest, sitting in a senior center, sharing the book with some other women in the senior center, saying, I met all these fish in the book. And so it really resonated with a lot of the readers. And that really blessed me to know that. So I had to write more.
Love that. And more we definitely got. Jacqueline, hello to you. Jacqueline says, my favorite people. Appreciate you joining us, Jacqueline. For those who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live, is where we primarily are being broadcast, but we are simulcasting on Facebook, like where Jacqueline is. We're on LinkedIn. We're on YouTube. I see some of you guys over there. We're on X. Hello to you guys over there on X, as well as on Instagram. Hello to you, Legal Success, over there on IG. Glad to have you. Jarek Mack, hello to you on IG as well. And because of that, this is a great, because we have men and women both here. And the one thing Dr. Velma and I talk about every time we do talk is that we have to go back to the beginning, because she's always going to be picking up new people. There are going to be people saying, what is this series? So I'm so glad that we kind of walk them through the story. And I'm glad that we have men and women that are here, Dr. Velma, because that brings us to the point you were just making, that this series has even evolved in the audience. Talk about what that's been like for you.
I didn't realize I had a male following. I really didn't until I started hearing from some of them saying, we read the books, because the books are the stories are written in a way that it will help to educate both the male and the female. So even though the black book, the purple book, is focused on the mistakes that women make when they choose their mates, men will learn from them too, because I think in the purple book, we talk about a character who was very professional, and it talked about a syndrome that professional women have. They like to blame the men on being judgmental because they're so successful and they're intimidated by their success. And that's a syndrome I didn't realize until I did the research. It's a syndrome among professional women who feel that they have they have the ability and the qualification to change anything in terms of work. They can switch it from something that's operating in a poor, substandard way and make it very successful. That's what they're good at. But they think that they can take that same skill set and apply it to a relationship that doesn't look that good, doesn't look as successful as it could be. But they believe if they apply the same work ethic that they apply to their jobs, they can switch that person and turn them into something successful in that relationship. And so it's a syndrome among professional women. I included that in there for that reason, because I discovered it myself. And then the men, they asked me, when are you going to write about the wrong women to date? I said, you have a point. Why don't you? And I surveyed a few men and asked them, tell me about your challenges when you're dating. I incorporated all that they said in the stories and examples in that book. And some of those are stories that I was very familiar with.
This conversation is always fascinating to me. It's why I started in 2000 and I'm getting old here. 2006 here in Mississippi.
Cyrus.
Myself and my good friend Stanley Clark, we started a co-ed book club.
Right.
And because there was this misconception, for one, that men didn't read and that and that men didn't like to discuss books, which I thought was odd because I'm a man and I read and I'm like, that seems very odd to me. But as you know, Dr. Velma, most book clubs are primarily women. When you hear about book clubs, here in Mississippi, we were the only one that did not have just women in it.
Right.
So which is how we end up getting attention. But I bring that up to say, what has that been like for you to see that there are men who want to be able to see the signs that you talk about? What does that say to you as the author, Dr. Velma, that you have men that are curious as to not only what you have to say about men, but also what you have to say about women too?
Well, the reason I started with the women, not only am I a woman, but I met so many of them that were making grave mistakes and they were judging and blaming the men for their own mistakes. Mm-hmm. And so that was one of the reasons I started. I wanted to write the book. And even in the first one, you see that it's the character, great Pastor Grayson's daughter, that has the issue. Throughout the book, that's what we're talking about, the issues that she faced. And so that was part of my conversation with women. You need to do a self-examination of where you are and what's broken, what's unfixed, what past are you holding on to yourself, and stop blaming the man for the choices that you're making, because you will only attract what you can attract. And if there's something that's not right with you, or some weight that you're dragging along from your past, you're going to attract that level of person in your life. So it's not his fault, it's your fault. And so that's what was important to me. So men really have been given a bad rap in terms of dating relationships. It's not always them. In many cases, from my experience in counseling women for over 30 years and couples and pre-marriage counseling sessions where they come in with the problem, expecting my husband and I to fix it. And you're looking at the problems, thinking to yourself, well, you're trying to marry the wrong person. So those are the problems. But those are your choices. And you shouldn't blame the man for that. That you should really take accountability for your own choices.
Accountability, such an important word. Susan Hartstock, hello to you over there on IG. Good to be able to see you. Glad you could join us as well. Let's talk about another thing, because I mentioned the newest book. It's hard to believe this is 4 months ago, Dr. Velma.
Okay, but wait a minute, Cyrus. You mentioned the word old. You were not old. I'm sitting here 70. I just turned 70 and you're talking about old?
Well, I'm older. I'm getting older. That's
okay. We're both older.
Right. 4 months, Dr. Velma. Can you believe it's been 4 months since your last release, The Catch Book of Fools?
Yep. And it's so popular that we're looking at another Catch Book of Fools.
Okay, so let's talk about this, because we mentioned the 3 novels. How did The Catch Book of Fools come about?
It came about because I knew that I had 2 audiences. I think I spoke with you about it once before. There's the logical audience who wants scripture reference. That's one of the reasons that many Christians don't gravitate towards fiction because we can't use a lot of scriptural references. And then there's those who prefers the entertainment. They're looking for you to describe and express, and they want to be drawn into the stories. Those are the ones that just want the entertainment. And so I had to figure out a way to combine all of them. Because I chose to write fiction, I can't tell you what the Bible reference is, even though the character Pastor Grayson talks about scriptural references a lot. And so I said, at some point, somebody's going to want to know, is this really true? God wrote over 200 scriptural references discussing a fool, describing foolish behavior. And I said, why isn't this in everybody's dating toolbox, both the male and the female? You need to know what the fool looks like. He's given us those descriptions. And so I said, let me take some of that and put it in a nonfiction book, make that the next part of the series, and call it the Catch Book of Fools. It's 80 scripture references, both for the male and the female, about what God says about a fool. Now, the fool is God's reference, not mine. I'm not calling anybody a fool. That's God's reference, and he gives the definition in terms of who a fool is and what are foolish behaviors. And those are the red flags that we talk about in the book, and you should be aware of them.
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know how it operates, so what Dr. Velma does, she gives you a scripture, then you have a prompt, and then you're able to do your own self-reflection. So we're going to choose one from Dr. Velma's book. I always enjoy doing this. So
Right.
just you can see how it goes. And I have it highlighted for you guys on the carousel over on Amazon. So I'm just going to choose one, Dr. Velma. Let's see what we got here.
Mhm.
We got, what? You saw me. I wasn't even looking. Okay, on page 34, disobedient deceivers. Titus 3:3. We were all once, we haven't done this one before. We were all once foolish and in sin. Should you date this person? So, Dr. Velma, if our audience gets this book, they get to number 34. What do you want them to think about when it comes to this point based on Titus 3:3?
That word disobedient, it's across the board. Disobedient with you and what you request of him or what you expect of him or her, disobedient at work, disobedient in terms of the laws of the land, just plain, I want to use a different word, but foolish.
Yeah.
Just foolish. So that one stands out really strong and bold. Why would you want to consider this type of person as a possible mate for you?
Yeah.
And he's disobedient. It's very clear that's who he is. His behavior shows it. He shows it, and he doesn't apologize for it. That's just who he is, and he accepts, or she accepts that as their lives. So why would you accept that person in your life?
Love that. It's a really good point. The Lone Chef, hello to you over there on IG. Let's see, I think it's pronounced Charm Beals over on IG as well. Glad you could be able to be with us as well. That's a really great point. And it ties into what you were saying earlier, Dr. Velma, about the red flags. And this has always been an interesting thing for me because it came up again today. As someone quoted Maya Angelou today, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And a lot of times we try to justify. And it kind of goes to what you literally just said. Well, that's just how they are. That's just who they are. And as if that makes it okay. So what do you want people to know about that? Not only what they see and observe, but also what they choose to accept.
And understanding you don't have to accept. Yeah. Understanding what a red flag looks like. That's all we're talking about in the Book of Fools. We're looking at throughout the series, we discuss red flags, why those are important, and why you should pay attention. Is red for a reason. Right. And I use the acronym RETREAT, extremely dangerous. That's what RED stands for. And so it's important for people to know that. And just like what you said, I've met plenty of male and female, more of the females who made excuses for what they saw in the behaviors of the person they were considering. And they were all red flags. And they're like that sometimes. Oh, they're not like that all the time. No, it only takes one time. Why are you still considering this person? And so it's important for us to pay attention, because what happens is we get too busy falling in love with strangers. We really don't know those people. We're not examining the heart of the person like God does. He looks at the heart, not on the outside experience. Who is this person truly? and examining who this person is, looking at their characteristics is what's important. And yet we fall in love with the exterior and what we see on the outside. And so we make excuses for what we see that are red flags. And that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah, such a great point and such a great conversation as well. Let's see, Christine Gunder, good to be able to see you over there on IG as well. Appreciate you guys being on. So, Dr. Velma, a lot going on for you. This has been a very busy year. You and I were just talking before we went live here. It's hard to believe there's less than 4 months left in this year. What should our audience be on the lookout for? We know we have this season of the podcast going on, Dr. Velma Talks. What else are you excited about?
I'm excited about just being excited with all we've done. I'm working on some more ideas and some more projects coming out. I'm going to add to the series, of course, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I've participated in some anthologies over the last year. I'm going to be releasing my story as ebooks, and so nice. I'm doing more to do that. And I'm looking forward to hearing responses from the audience that's listening to the podcast, because I hope to continue to address the questions, specific issues the audience raises. I don't want to just come up with my own version of what I think everybody wants to know, but I'm definitely going to be addressing some of the questions that's been presented to me thus far. So if you have them, feel free to tune in to Dr. Velma Talks on Saturdays. It's 12 o'clock Pacific time and 3 o'clock Eastern time. I'm live on all social media, pretty much. LinkedIn, Amazon. Make sure you subscribe. Not Amazon, I'm sorry. YouTube, make sure you subscribe. You can also subscribe to my Facebook, drvelmabagby.com, and stay in touch with things that are going to be happening. So more to come, Cyrus.
A lot of great things happening. Again, everyone, Dr. Velma Bagby has been our guest. Make sure you guys get her books in the Catch series right here on Amazon. We have them highlighted for you guys on the carousel. I have right now highlighted The Catch No One Wants. And then we have The Wrong Catch. You see it here. Then there's The Wrong Catch. She'll Tear Down the House here. And then the newest book, as we mentioned here, The Catch, Book of Fools. All of them are in the carousel. Now, you will see other books in the carousel as well by Dr. Velma. You see there, Your Adam is Asleep. You see that one, My 70s Love Story. She and I have talked about that before. That one's only 99 cents for the Kindle edition. So you can definitely go over there on Amazon and get the copies of the books for yourself. And Dr. Velma, let them know how to stay connected with you.
Look, I'm on all the social media platforms, so just look for Dr. Velma Bagby.com, Dr. Velma Bagby. On my Dr. Velma page is on Facebook. I am also on Instagram as Dr. Velma Bagby, the author. So just look for me on any of those platforms, LinkedIn as well as YouTube, and you'll find me. I'm also going to be participating with Cyrus in a project coming September. So I'm looking forward to joining him and a few other wonderful friends that I've come to know through Cyrus's network. And we will be talking about his book. So stay tuned for that as well.
That's right. Word That Choose to Live By is returning in September right here on Amazon, but we are simulcasting it as well. Looking forward to it as well, Dr. Velma. Looking forward to our next chat together as well.
Thank you, Cyrus. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, I'm Cyrus Webb, and thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.